At first glance, this Venusaur looks gem mint, but let's talk about whether it's worth grading by looking at these errors here, and then going into discussion on the Venusaur EX 198. Here are the timestamps for your convenience, and if you want to skip around to a specific spot. Now for this first section, we're going to talk about whether it's actually financially worth it to actually grade the card, because I don't want to waste my money. I know you don't want to waste yours, but right now the card costs about $93 raw if you were to buy it. Plus there's about a $25 grading fee if you're going through your LGS, because it's about $20 per card, $5 for shipping, so you can bundle it together to save money on the shipping portion, but generally this was going to cost you. Now if you pull the card, you can generally say it's free or whatever the pack cost is, and then if you bought it, you're still putting that price of $93 up front. So taking the $93 and $25 in consideration, you got to bundle that together for how much you're spending. Now if you're fortunate enough to get a 10, you make a pretty good profit, over $300, and then if you make a 9, you actually lose some money, so you definitely need to get a 10 to come out ahead here, and a lot of that can be decided on the first stage of our card review, which is the centering stage. So after scanning the card, we're going to upload the image to the TAGGrading website, which I personally like to use. It's free, it has a little bit of advertisements, but it's not bad. You get a really clean image, you can control your lines really easily here. And as we can see on the front side, we have a 51 and 49 on both the top and bottom and left and right. The gem mint tolerance for PSA and tag on the front is the same. It's a 10% tolerance. What that means is that the top or bottom and the left and right both individually have to be less than 10%. It doesn't add together. They're two separate lines. So for here, when we're looking at the top and bottom, the 51 minus 49 means 2%, right? So that's within 10%. The same thing happens and applies to the left and right. There's a 2% difference. Again, less than 10%. But if either one of those were to be above that 10%, then it's automatically not Gem Mint 10 material. However, in this case, both are. So let's go ahead and move on to the back of the card. Now we're doing the same thing on the back of the card as we did on the front. We're scanning it, TAGGrading website, fantastic. So what we're seeing here is the left and right has a perfect 50 out of 50, which means that there's 0% difference. On the top and bottom, there's a 4% difference. You take 52 minus 48, and then that's 4%. However, PSA and tag have two different tolerances for the back. So for the back, tag has a 30% tolerance, PSA has a 50% tolerance. Here we can see that the worst out of the two is 4%. 4% is easily within 30% or 50%, meaning this card on front and back is centered approved for Gem Mint 10. So what we're going to do now is move on to the surface of the card, because now it's past the centering stage, we got to start looking at other details of the card. So for the surface, the first thing that I like to do is grab a microfiber towel and go over the front and back of the card, just to clean off any kind of dust, debris, anything like that. And initially when I was writing it down, I completely forgot, but on the surface of the card, I didn't see anything underneath the angled light on the front, but on the back I did. I did note a small white or a small black speck on the back of the card, but I didn't take any images to get a closer inspection on it, so I don't know what happened there. But I did take a black light to the front and back of the card, and I really like using black lights. This is a newer kind of thing for me, but I saw them point out that like the whitening, discoloration, and silvering really pop. It's not going to show every single thing, but it makes it a lot more easy to see. If you can't see underneath an angled like sunlight or an LED light, then you get the black light to kind of back you up here. So overall, for the surface of the card, the front and back, I would say are pretty minty. There's not much wrong with it besides that one black speck, which I don't have a view of on this recording anymore. But let's go ahead and move on to the corners and edges now. So for the corners and edges, it's essentially the same thing as what you're doing for the surface. You're putting underneath a nice angled light, and you're kind of shifting it around to see if anything pops up. Again, the black light is going to be really useful here, especially for corners and edges, because that's typically where most of the whitening shows up. So you can see here, I'm like flashing the light, kind of playing around with it and just seeing if anything stands out. Now on the front of the card, when I'm looking at the edges itself, I don't really understand or see any huge defects. I see maybe a small like indentation, which is more obvious actually when we get to the back of the card. On top of that, what we see at the top left of the card, which I'm pushing around right now, is a small micro whitening that's on that left side. So I wanted to call that out. That is a minor ding to the whitening of the card. And as we rotate this card around, what we're looking for is any kind of thing that might sway the opinion of the silvering or whitening. And we do see, I think, is a minor indentation on the right centered edge, which we're calling out here. I'm assuming that it's really hard to see. It's not like a whitening or anything because I used a black light on it, but it becomes way more apparent when you go through and actually put your finger over it, because you can see a shadow kind of gets created, so you can see that indentation. And additionally, I brought up my microscope to get some more close-up shots for you guys for this, but something happened with the actual like translation of data, and I did not get that to show you, so I apologize, but there was a minor white speck on the top left edge near the corner that I notated as well. So overall on this card, we did notate that the centering was really good overall. The surface looked pretty good besides the one black like spot on the back of the surface, which is, I can't even find it anymore. But then we also have the edges and corners. That's really what holds this card back a bit and actually can damage the rating quite a lot. So we had a indentation potentially on the back that's apparent also on the front, so it kind of goes both sides on one of the edges. We had some micro whitening also happening on some of the corners and then also on some of the edges. In total, I would say that there's about 4 between the edge and corners for micro whitening, and then there's also that potential indentation that's happening on that edge. So I think overall I would put this into like an 8 to 8.5 category. When I looked at the card shop when I was getting it, I thought it was a 10 because the centering was perfect. The surface looked good underneath the lighting that they had, but I felt a little bit rushed because of the person I went to. They just didn't make me feel welcome. So this is one of my first times thinking I found a gem 10 material, but when I got home and looked underneath the light, I saw more flaws. That's why it's really important to have the right lighting conditions and I guess non-stress levels to help you out with that. That's why it's so important for you to have the right lighting available to you, because then you can actually see what's happening on the card. So you see in the game shops or the card vendor shows isn't necessarily what you're going to see when you're into a controlled environment and look at the card underneath the right lighting. So we finally got the Venusaur back from TAGGrading. So what I want you to do is comment down below what grade you think this is going to get. Is it going to get an 8.5 like I said, or is it going to be something different? Now go ahead and take 3 seconds to think about it, and let's check out the reveal. And it comes back at an 8.5, which is exactly what we predicted. I did think it was going to come back maybe as an 8, so I'm fairly happy with the results here. What we can do is actually dig into the report. It's called a dig report, and it actually shows you more information and gives you validation on what's wrong with the actual card itself. And we can see how close we want to get. Now this would extend the video a lot more. So what I'll do here is, if you want to look at the certification, I'll put it right here on the screen for you. And you can check out the dig report yourself by going to the TAGGrading website, do a certification lookup, and see if those same issues were the same thing that TAG identified as well. And if that's the case, then we know. If you'd like to see me do something where I actually go into the dig report and talk about that more, leave a comment down below. I'd love to get that feedback. I just feel like that would extend this video way too long, and some people may not be interested in that, but let me know down below. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching today. I appreciate you being here and being part of the Guess That Grade activities. Until next time, keep guessing that grade.